Ladies and gentlemen, the general session is about to begin. Please silence your smartphones, but keep them out, and don't forget the hashtag NRPA Conference.
Good morning, everyone. All right. Welcome to day 2. How was yesterday? How was day 1? It was good? It's a great day. How many folks got a chance to go to the Mardi Gras World last night? I saw a few guys on the dance floor. Anyone went to Bourbon Street? No judgment. No judgment on that. All right. I think it looks like everyone has their coffee and their tea or morning beverage. This is New Orleans, so no judgment on what your morning beverage is here. But let me begin with just a few questions. Are you overwhelmed by all of the great ideas that you want to implement in your profession? Would you like to crush the obstacles that are in your way? Are you ready to laugh and be stressless while creating real change in your world? Well, if you answered yes to any of those questions, you are in the right place. And if you answered no, you may be in serious denial, but you're still in the right place. So our speaker today has been stirring up difficult conversations for over a decade, performing on stage as a stand-up comic, speaking on stage as a diversity educator, and moving teams from abstract to action. She is a member of the National Speakers Association and is a certified speaker professional, which is fewer than 10% of speakers worldwide hold this credential. When she's not traveling around the country, she is spoiling her Pug Lab mix Leo and listening to Johnny Cash cover bands. So today she's going to share with us how to have conversations that matter, especially when it comes to difficult conversations. As we all seek to serve our diverse communities and strive for social equity, this skill couldn't be more important. So please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Jessica Pettit. I got it.
Thanks very much. Thanks. I gave you that minute because you noticed something, right? My hair, maybe my amazing necklace, maybe my what Johnny Cash would look like if he was a drag queen. It's okay, you can notice, I do it too. These are called making judgments and assumptions. Now, I know, just saying that, judgments and assumptions, if you've ever been to a diversity training, you're like, oh God, it's New Orleans at 8 o'clock, what are you doing? I get that. Here's what's interesting. We make judgments and assumptions all the time. There's nothing wrong with making judgments and assumptions. We do it to feel safe and to feel prepared. It's possibly what we do with the judgments and assumptions that may need to be under review, but making them isn't a problem. In your daily jobs, there is an exquisitely designed system that produces the results you get. Francis Kendall's one of my favorite quotes. In your daily work, you typically have seconds to figure out, do you need backup? Is this person welcome in this space? Do I know this person? Do they need help? What do I need to bring? What do I need to attribute? What do I need to say? How do I adjust my language so that this person feels accepted or this person sees me as an authority? Those are judgments and assumptions. You're picking and choosing which bits and pieces of you to show up for them based on the story you write about them. Part of my job is to undo the harm of really bad diversity trainings, right? Oh, you've been to them. Okay, great. So what I think is interesting is that I was a bad diversity trainer for years. So when we would hear terms and I would throw them around, sometimes I see them painted on the wall around inclusion, social equity, right? The end of all things terrible. But we don't know what that means. We don't know what we're supposed to do. And then what ends up happening is this kind of backlash wave of like, well, I just don't want to offend anybody. I'm just here to do my job, right? Inside the context of professional development, we often can have these conversations. But then when we clock out of work and we're at the grocery store and somebody parks in 3 spaces and road rage happens and you want to throat punch people because they don't know how to park their truck, we have forgotten what we learned in our professional development. Does this make sense? My job is to undo the harm of crappy diversity trainings and to actually leave you with a tangible, immediately applicable, for free, things that you can do that will actually help you enjoy where you work and provide space for other people to enjoy it too. When we say everyone deserves a park, I think that is both a metaphor and a reality. I think everybody deserves a community. I think everybody deserves a center where they can go to. I think everybody deserves safety. Everybody deserves space for their voice. Often when I do these kind of trainings or keynotes or things, what ends up happening is we somehow slippery slide to children, youth, right? Like, let's empower youth. Here's a news flash for youth. Youth don't need empowerment. They got power. They need a space to be heard, which means we, as grown-ups, need to shut our face and actually listen. That is a vulnerable space. No, let's just keep talking. Let's make more t-shirts. That's what we should do. The irony is the answers to the things that frustrate you the most, not just at work, but in life. The things that frustrate you the most, you actually already know the answer. We just spend more time trying to pretend it's not complicated. We spend more time figuring out budgets and themed programs, right? Like, that's exciting. We will plan conferences, we will make like publications, Marcom has a job, like we will do this so that we don't have to do this. We will plan entire programs that are around anti-racism work and never actually envision our staff or users of color in any kind of leadership position. We will, go ahead, snappy snaps, it's good. What I mean by that, and let me kind of explain, is that, let me do it this way. Do any of you remember Ghostbusters? I don't mean the girl version, I mean the original. If you've seen the original, the most recent one is funnier because there's a lot of cameos, and if you didn't see the first one, you don't know that. It's like old people jokes. So, in the original, there is an actress, her name is Annie Potts, Google her, and there's a line in the movie where they get their first customer, and she slams down on this buzzer and says, "We got one." This is how most organizations do diversity. We got one. The pictures look amazing. Sometimes they're artistic and a mural will appear, right? But we're not actually envisioning people different than us in any kind of leadership position, let alone having a vision of actually shifting our work so that we can move from abstract to actionable. Part of the reason we can't envision it is because some of us have never seen it. And by never seeing it, we don't even know that we're not noticing. That's a key word, notice. Having one is old diversity trainings. There's a lot of people who don't even have one. But when you do have one, what ends up happening is that one gets tokenized, is on every committee, has to serve in every volunteer role, as well as asterisk other duties assigned, because the users of your spaces see them, and then they have to do a whole bunch of other work that other people don't have to do. So we burn them out, and they leave the field. Got one is not the finish line. It's kind of a semi-pathetic first step, but at least it's a first step. What I want to share with you today is that it is an imperative that we move forward. In order to move forward, we have to provide space for everyone, not just the people you're interested in providing space for. And what I mean by this is not some like pinko, commie, liberal, I live in California. Someone's like, of course she lives in California, right? That's not what I mean. Right now, I don't know if you've been watching the news. Some of you are like, nope, gave that up months ago. There are a ton of topics every day that are incredibly complicated. Incredibly complicated. What I want to invite you to do is to have a conversation about the complication. To do something in the complication, not just awaiting an answer. When I started and talked about noticing, we all make judgments and assumptions. The judgments and assumptions are informed by our lived experience. Our life, from the moment we can remember to today, right now. Some of you, it has been a life goal that you made it to a keynote at 8 a.m. in the morning, right? And it's in New Orleans. You definitely get double the points. Good job. What I think is important is that your life, all of your life, is the best tool you have to work with other people. When we talk about doing this kind of noticing, it's about self-reflection, it's about personal responsibility, it's about being who you are, even if it's in the minority. If I'm talking about politics or religion or personal beliefs or incongruent elements about things that you represent or that you believe, that's who you are. I deeply believe that every single person that is hired is actually hired because of those skills, not because of who they might become. Largely because, let's be honest, y'all don't have time or the extra budget or the extra hours to groom somebody to become something else on your staff. If you have those resources, you're using them for your users, not for your staff, mostly. What I encourage you to do is to look at the judgments and assumptions you make, because those patterns have taught you this is how you can show up safe. This is how you can show up prepared. When I keynote, I go into different spaces and I have to figure out, am I allowed to have exposed tattoos? I have a lot of tattoos. When I make the judgment and assumption, for the record, y'all would have been fine. This is just a good outfit. But I don't necessarily know if I'm right. And what's interesting about judgments and assumptions is we don't often provide space to find out if we are right. It doesn't matter. We write an eloquent, complicated story to make us feel safe and prepared. For some of us, waking up and showing up is already an act of revolution. I don't want to do anything else. For others, we clock in like a hobby to have these difficult conversations, and then we go back to our real lives. That's complicated, and it's true. If you and I can notice the patterns of our judgments and assumptions, we can be reflective on the moments in our life that led us here. After this session, I'm doing a deeper dive specifically to kind of help figure out ways that you can fit in to understand what makes you frustrating, not just them, although we'll work with them too. The point is not to not make judgments and assumptions, but to notice you do. If you can notice the judgments and assumptions you make, you can embrace the complications that is your life. the complications that made up your history that you bring every day, not just to work, but to the grocery store, to the movies, to a sidewalk. If you can know the judgments and assumptions that you make, then you can be responsible for who and how you are. I believe this is the most important key, is that we are all responsible for who and how we are. Now, let's pretend you've done this. You don't have to do it completely yet. It's like yoga. Do you know what I mean by yoga? Some of you are like, I saw a video once. Fun facts about yoga. Evidently, you can't do it once a year and like check it off a list. I personally find this completely ridiculous, and I think it's just like one of those rackets so that you buy a punch card or something. You also can't like walk a half marathon once every 5 years and call yourself physically fit. This is according to my doctor, whatever. If we talk about physical health, or we talk about our breath, or we talk about how we align our bodies, you have to do this every day. No. Like every day? Maybe. How about this? How about some of the time? Let's take the pressure off of doing this like self-reflection work, right? Like you're busy already. What would happen if you did the best you can with what you have some of the time? That's kind of more manageable. So if you do the best you can with what you have some of the time, noticing the judgments and assumption patterns that you do, and where they come from, and why they make you feel safe, and why they make you feel prepared, you can understand the complications of what that means, and that it's okay to be complicated. That's not just a relationship status on Facebook. Like, things are complicated. Then what's left is the action. What I invite us to do is to notice the stories we write, notice the judgments and assumptions we make, and then print them out. Triple space with extra wide margins. If you print them out, triple space with extra wide margins, what you are doing is generously and curiously engaging with someone else to seek edits. You know your story may not be 100% right. When I wrote my book, I gave it out to people hoping that they would tell me it's terrible so I didn't have to publish it. I wanted edits. I needed people outside of my own head to tell me, does this make any sense? When I got their feedback and their edits, my book got better. The same thing happens when we size somebody up. That could be on a hiring process. That could be at Starbucks outside. You make judgments and assumptions, there's patterns there. Done. Okay, great. But then once you notice the story, allow space. Leave room for edits. Print that out and seek new information. Allowing people space to tell them their truth, to tell you their truth, you can then write it in. Update your own story with their truth. This requires not just curiosity and generosity, but it also requires a sense of vulnerability. You might not be right. It requires a sense of authenticity because you're responsible for the story that you write. It's a complicated writing and editing and rewriting and re-editing process. This can make sense, but the application of it is challenging. When we talk about parks, the reason why I think this is an excellent truth and an excellent metaphor is because you're providing space. You're providing space, either outside or indoors, that these folks don't have otherwise. Your purpose is to help people go outside. One of the best things I've seen on Facebook this week, who says that, right? One of the best things I've seen on Facebook this week is this wild thread was happening, and finally someone just typed in and said, can we take 5, all of us, Go outdoors. Come back in 5 minutes, and we can do this again. But go outside and find something alive. Maybe green, if that's even possible. Go outdoors. We forget the importance of space, not just in finding truth, but in finding us. If I can find me, I'm going to be way more able to find you. If I can find you, we can actually build community. When we say words like social equity, what I think is at the base of it is a place where people feel like they belong. And I don't just mean some people, but I mean a place where complication can belong. Everybody deserves space. Everybody deserves a park. These are critical conversations that matter. What I mean is the conversation itself is complicated. What matters about that conversation is complicated. Some of us, it was sitting room only, standing room only, with people hovering at the doors yesterday, went to a session about statues in parks. And what I heard while sitting on the ground in the back was some people just needed, like, take them down or leave them up. What do I do? And some people, there is a very clear answer to that. And then they start going historically, like where the statues came from and what they mean, and that other countries don't have statues to certain people, and da-da-da-da, right? Like, it's easy. But what's interesting is that your easy may be complicated for someone else. So I was sharing, I live in a really small town in Northern California, and we have one of those statues in the middle of the plaza. It's in the middle of the plaza, surrounded by pot-smoking transients that live on the plaza. What is interesting is it's free music at the farmer's market, right? And to have both of these needs in the same space, who gets served first with a limited budget? What makes this complicated is that there are some people on my city council that think if they can take down that statue, they'll be a good one. There will be no more racism in the county. Fun facts, not true. There would just be one less statue in the county. Do I want our limited budgets, my property taxes, to give people a false indication that they've done good with the limited money they have available? Or do I want to have a complicated conversation about what happens around race and history, specifically in our county? And if we are going to do that, before, in my community, like well-intentioned white liberal people take down a statue because of what has happened in what we think is only in the South, all of that is a misnomer. We should also talk about the fact that there's a statue that represents slavery on a square that's on stolen land to begin with. There is a possibility in my county that an island is going to be sold back to the people we stole it from. The one rich guy in town who owns the newspaper, he might buy the island because he likes to go fishing. It's complicated. What's amazing is that I'm a super action-oriented person, and I wish I could tell you, eat yellow Skittles and it all gets easier. For the record, eat yellow Skittles because they're good, but it doesn't get easier and your dentist will be mad. That's even complicated. The things that you are seeking the answer, capital T, capital A, the answer, probably is a point that you are not willing, you are not comfortable to actually have a complicated conversation. Let's take bathrooms. Love the concept of bathrooms. My parents died when I was young, but I'm pretty sure they'd be really proud of me. But I have done ridiculous amounts of research about what actually happens in public restrooms. So, for the record, some people urinate and poop. That's the easy part. Inside public bathrooms, we have drug use, drug sales, we have sex trafficking, we also have sex acts, we have sex work, We also have gendered related experiences about who can actually use which bathroom. And we also have people who try to sleep so that they're not in the middle of a storm. Plus, I'm saying plus because I'm sure I'm leaving something out, and somebody in the hallway is going to be like, let me tell you what happens in our bathrooms. It's complicated. It's a bathroom. When we talk, like, let's take the trans piece. When we talk specifically about trans folks, for some, you don't know what that means. So having a conversation about who gets to use a bathroom is a little too far for you. You need to start here. And when you are engaging in a conversation who doesn't need to start here, with someone who's like, why are we having this rudimentary conversation? This is what we need to be talking about. You are guaranteed to miscommunicate. Those of us that think we know everything, take a second and think about something that makes you uncomfortable, that you don't know everything about. That's how these folks feel when you're in your expertise. I did not realize this. I've been doing this work for 15 years. I never thought about this until the Cubs. Any of you familiar with the Cubs? Okay. So let me explain to the rest of the room. The Cubs are a baseball team. So let me back up. Baseball is a stick and 4 squares and a bunch of people and hot dogs. I do not do the sports ball. I was raised by a professional athlete. I burnt out on this stuff before I could drive, okay? I do not do the sports ball at all. Now, I am obsessed with politics. So prior to the Cubs winning this thing called the World Series, which I would like to point out does not have any competitors from any teams from any other country, but yet the World Series, someone's gonna tweet at me, there are players from other countries playing on American teams. Thank you. Okay, anyway, until this moment, when I would talk to someone who didn't know about local, state, or federal legislation that was being debated, or didn't know who was running in a primary, I would be so mad at them because they're apathetic and they're not doing their civic duty. That might be true, but some people just don't do the politics. Some people don't have an opinion about SB 1070. Some people, their lives depend on this. What is interesting is when the Cubs did the winning thing, how that impacted me was my favorite hamburger place gave away free hamburgers and milkshakes. Right, I was in that line. Free hamburgers and milkshakes, yes, hello, how are you? I'm right here. And I'm listening to people. People are talking about, I don't know, something about a goat. Something about somebody who had a candy bar named after him. Then I needed a Baby Ruth, right? Like, then there was this history thing, and then there was this number of years, and something about a green wall, and something about cardinals. I have no idea. Free hamburgers and milkshakes. That is what I'm here for. In that moment, I realized that to some folks, there's like stats related to this stickball thing that are important to them. And they're talking a completely different language. It's complicated. If we can print out our judgments and assumptions, triple spaced with extra wide margins, we can stand in line for free hamburgers and milkshakes and realize we have no idea what people are talking about without being threatened. This is an area that I don't know about. Fascinating. If I am responsible for who and how I am in that moment while waiting for my milkshake, it is important for me to remember that when I talk to people about difficult subjects or challenging topics, let's be honest, my grandmother gave me a list of things you're never supposed to talk about, and I just dove right in. That is all I talk about. It is possible that someone on the other side was like me with the Cubs. How is that not providing space for everyone? It's complicated. When we talk about trans folks, you need to understand that socially, it's unacceptable to ask people what their genitalia looks like. If you use this as an icebreaker, stop. Nobody wants to know, okay? Socially unacceptable to find out what your genitalia looks like. Most of us have such little budgets, we don't have space for a centrifuge machine to work on hormone levels or chromosomes either. But most of our policies somehow are based on this series of assumptions. When I do work with the Olympic decisions or the NCAA, what is amazing is that all of those super gendered teams, we call them single sex, but they're really not. We don't know this information. It's socially unacceptable to ask someone, you're a barista, please drop your pants. Thank you, sir. We don't do that. But our policies assume we do. When we use restrooms or when we divide a room into two teams, we do it based on this information that is an assumption. Stop. Do it based on facts. Even better, do it based on facts they tell you about themselves. So when we work on gender, what this means is the role someone plays, the identity they hold, how they express themselves. That's gender. And weird, it is possible that someone else knows themselves better than you do, especially if they're a stranger. But we typically police these spaces from our judgments and our assumptions because we need to feel safe and we need to feel prepared. I challenge most of the organizations who pay me a redonkulous amount of money to help them with their policies and procedures. Please look me up, I cash all checks. What they need to start with is that they're protecting the wrong people. You're building community spaces. If someone has chosen your space, they've chosen your space because they don't have anywhere else to go. If you can just hold that space for them and be someone who doesn't know the stickball, and listen to these people who were so excited the Cubs won. Why would I be a buzzkill and tell them that professional sports are expensive and horrible? It's not the right time and place for that truth. I bring this to you because when we talk about moving from abstract to action, sometimes the action isn't doing something. It's shutting your face and allowing someone to be. If you can allow someone else to be, what's weird is it's going to become a habit and you'll start to be. If you can start to be and you allow them to start to be, whoops, you're going to have a conversation that matters. And it didn't even cost anything, and you didn't even have to make a t-shirt. I wish I had evidence that t-shirts killed baby seals. They don't, but they also do not solve problems. If you can sit in it's complicated and listen, you will have better conversations. More importantly, you will have better connections. The connections you can make with a stranger when you both reach for the same chip. That happens, right? That moment where you're like, get your hands off my chip. This is only me. Okay, good to know. At the receptions, in the hallways, when you're going into your workshops, you make judgments and assumptions about every little teeny tiny thing. You also make them about huge things. We assume that if someone is conservative, one, they voted for Trump, and two, not only did they vote for Trump, but they're this. And when you've signed up someone who, I don't know, has sherbet cockatiel hair, you assume they're super liberal, they must have voted for Hillary, which means they're this. The reality is the vast majority of eligible voters didn't even vote. Of the people who did vote, most of the people who voted for him because he was not her. And most of the people who voted for her because she was not him. We have this in common. We don't talk about politics right now because we're being told we're polarized. That is also very complicated. You know why? Because the more polarized we are, somebody's making money. The more divisive, the more divided, the more I hate you, but I'm a good person, the more we do that, one, the less we're going to have conversations that matter. And I believe the more important it is that you can provide spaces for everyone. And when I say that, I mean everyone. It is imperative for our communities to be able to understand that in the spaces that you provide, not only is it complicated to provide them in the first place, but it is complicated to use them as well. Again, in my small town, there's a bay where the pluming plover, it's an endangered species, nests. Recently, close to 1,000 people were cleared out of this area from tent cities that some people had lived in for generations. Not because of the pluming plovers, but because the city had won a grant to put in a bike trail. That bike trail does not help the pluming plovers. We now have thousands of people who are displaced trying to live somewhere, and do I want to have a conversation about the removal of a statue when what's really happened is rich people who want to kayak to work or ride a bike or have a picnic can now do that at the cost of the environment on land that was stolen in the first place? Who are we replacing to use this space for things that are more socially acceptable? Who is allowed to use your space? When we talk about inclusion, the first step of that conversation should be, who are we excluding? Crappy diversity trainings have taught us to say, oh, we're not excluding anyone. Yes, you are. You do criminal background checks. You figure out who's allowed to use your space. Sometimes they pay dues, sometimes they have to get permits. You police the space as to who is allowed to use it. If you and your organization, your staff, your team can clarify who is not allowed to use your space, you will be able to better serve the people that you're actually trying to include. None of us can be 100% inclusive of every human being all the time. There's not that much space. If every single person in your county showed up at the same time, you wouldn't have enough chairs. Right? I'm a do-gooder social justice educator and advocate. Let's be realistic about what it is we actually do. The key is that it's complicated and everyone deserves that space. If we can just stay there, that's already a lot of work. But it moves from these abstract concepts to actions that don't necessarily result in like immediate results, but actions that result in building community. Now, some of you are like, nope, I paid money. Some of you are paying out of your own pocket to be here. I need some stuff. I need a handout. I need a worksheet. I got to do something. So I invite you to take out your mini computers in your pockets. Those are your phones. Some of you are still moving a little slow. I got it. Okay. Take out your phones. This is free. I will not automatically add you to a newsletter or anything like that. I don't do that. I don't like spam. But what I'm going to ask you to do is to go to a website. It's called Kiwi Live. Kiwi like the fruit, live like not dead. KiwiLive.com. When you go there, it's going to ask you for a keyword. You type in Jessica, Jessica. It'll ask you for your email and things like this, because when I go to conferences, I get a lot of stuff, and then it takes me a week to catch up from being gone. So if you do this, what will end up happening into your inbox, number one, will be an assessment that's free and it does not cost any money to actually answer these questions. But you can assess your immediate space. What is in your space? Who is on your staff? Who's on your board of directors? Who's in your volunteers? There's an assessment tool. There's a handout that we'll use for the deeper dive right after this in Riverfront. There's some other additional resources that, if they are helpful, they will continue these conversations. My job is not to come with answers. Some of you are super disappointed. My job is to remind us that conversations matter. Again, it's kiwilive.com, keyword Jessica. Type in your info, it'll show up in your inbox. It's easy. Welcome to the technologies. If I can leave you with anything today, you have a full day of conference left. It ends tonight with best of the best. I'll be there. Wait till you see the dress. Whoa. What I want to leave you with is more of a start. If all of us can provide some space, everyone deserves space. Everyone deserves to be heard. Everyone deserves a chance to be seen. That's free. It's just not typical. It's not what we typically do. When we really look at social equity and inclusion, I suggest less paint and more listening. If we can be responsible for who and how we are, that in itself can be revolutionary. If we can do the best we can with what we have, some of the time, we will continue making relationships and connections and having conversations that matter. Everyone deserves a park. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you for the rest of the day.
The club isn't the best place to find the lovers, so the bar is where I go.
You are dismissed, and you should be going to your fancy workshops. Thank you very much. Hi, boss.
So I want to make sure your session starts when?
Next,
Okay, and it's where?
Riverfront.
Riverfront, which is right around, take a right. So
And that's going to be much more like tangible, practical, like what am I talking about there? I only had 45 minutes. Some of you just got here.
thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you very much.